Welcome to Passionate Pulse podcast. Today, our guest is a skilled brand architect, a driving force behind numerous CXOs in shaping both their personal and corporate identities. With a keen focus on technology advocacy and strategic counsel, she specializes in the revitalization and redefinition of businesses. She illuminates the paths of entrepreneurs and innovators, propelling them to positions of influence within their industries. An inspiring example of a dependent immigrant who has shined in the US, she has crafted her own journey through continuous skill acquisition and adaptability in the rapidly evolving tech landscape. Serving as a leader, she is forging ahead with a supportive community by her side. Her initiatives have ignited pathways for young girls to excel in robotics and for women to flourish in STEM fields. As a proud founder of a brand and buzz marketing firm, she steers individuals and companies towards establishing distinctive identities. She has pushed tech companies to the forefront of innovation in highly competitive areas like artificial intelligence, software, robotics, and consulting services. Beyond her professional accomplishments, she remains a cornerstone within various organizations, steering them towards initiatives tailored for career changes and pioneering new career trajectories. Guiding women leaders towards triumphant accomplishment, she has earned her place as a Forbes Council member, contributing insightful articles to the career oriented community. She has won two Stevie Awards and many other prestigious honors. She is often invited as a speaker on startup panels, providing wise advice for entrepreneurs on their journeys. Additionally, her esteemed role as a respected jury member for multiple robotics and STEM competitions underscores her influence. Please join us in extending a warm welcome to the brand architect and the STEM advocate, Parna Sarkar-Basu, as we explore the power of personal branding today.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, and thank you for having me on the show.
So, Parna, I would like to, take your all journey recorded. I know what you do now. A lot of listeners, a lot of viewers know what you do now. But when we have to go back, you are from India, you immigrated from there. You came as a dependent, first of all, and how your career journey started and how this brand and buzz came into the life.
Well, thank you for that, for asking. So yes, I think my story is very similar to a lot of immigrant story. You know, we come to this country for various reasons. In my case, I came here following my husband, who was finishing his PhD at MIT. We were supposed to have been here about 3 months. Needless to say, we landed up staying way longer, and then we had kids, and there was no going back. So I'm very grateful for everybody who opened doors for me, the whole support community that I have today, including yourself. But yes, I have to say that when you come to a different country, you don't have a network, you don't know anybody, and you didn't go to school here. The only person you know is your husband. So it was tough, but I also was I also had the privilege of meeting a lot of different people. I did want to have a career, so I started knocking on doors saying, what can I do? Can you give me a job? And nobody did. So, but after a lot of trying and it's perseverance in short. And there was one female executive who opened the door for me. She hired me as an unpaid intern. I put in like long hours doing competitive research, market analysis, and so on. That's how I began. And then it was a male executive who gave me my first job. So I'm again very grateful. And since then, I have literally gotten moved up my career working in different companies, big companies and startup companies, but all in tech. And I about 5 years ago, I decided that it was time to start my own company so I could do more for different brands and for entrepreneurs and for women entrepreneurs. And that's when I launched Brand and Buzz. And it is a consulting firm. We are dedicated to helping companies pivot, shape the way tech companies are positioned so that they can succeed, they can grow in this very rapidly changing market. And of course, as you were saying, we also build market credibility for entrepreneurs and tech leaders, whether they're preparing to fundraise, get acquired, or expand.
Let's just take your journey a little back, because this is a very important part that you mentioned, that you came here on a dependent. You literally was going forward to see where you can find your next job or next opportunity to start your career, especially after having a setback from India and when you are moving here. At this particular point, there are maybe 30% of the women from the states, like I know, like H4 visa, totally dependent. They just don't know how to start. They're not into the tech, especially you. You were not into the tech prior, and your education was little off from the tech industry. So how did you get that kickstart? And many women especially would love to understand, what you really did to make it there, what you really did to stay relevant, what you really did to, enter into the space, but at the same time made sure that what you have enriched with your education and experience is making it relevant, like pivoting the industry, but at the same time making a move such that it is not a way off, but you're excelling your career in the right segment.
For sure. So I think for me, my lesson learned was being persistent. Failure was not an option for us. Because when you come to this country, you are also financially limited how much money you can bring. And when you're students, you don't have much money there. However, I think I was very persistent, because once we realized that we weren't going to go back, within the 3 months, because, he needed more time to finish his PhD, then we wanted to do his postdoc and so on and so forth. So what I landed up doing was, when people wouldn't give me a job because, hey, you're from India, what do you know? Was a question. And I would say, ask me anything and I can tell you. But what I realized very quickly is that I needed to show some affiliation here in the States. So I landed up going to Boston University, spoke with a professor in advertising and marketing, and I said, I'm Parna. I'm new. I don't know anybody. I got no money, so I cannot pay you. But I would love to learn, like, how is advertising done in the US that people say I don't know, or how should I be approaching programs and projects. He was the kindest person. He allowed me to audit his class and his course. Just like a regular student, he allowed me to come to class. I did projects with my fellow students. And that was kind of how I started, when I said determination, but it's also I had to learn, the way things work in this country. So that's one way I would say. But once I was hired, speaking of the tech industry, I landed up working with an agency, and in turn working with IBM, where I used to actually be in the IBM facility in New York for every week, because we were kind of an integral part of working with the team. And I was told, of course, I didn't have, and this would be interesting. So the program they put me on was LAN and WAN, local area network and wide area network. I knew nothing.
You knew nothing?
Think about it. So I called the product team and I said, hey, you can tell my boss, Parna knows nothing about this technology, and get me fired, or you could bring me to the labs and teach me, like, what is that all about? And they were, again, so kind. They flew me to Raleigh. I spent a week over there learning about LAN, WAN, operating system, you name it. And that was the beginning of my embracing technology. And since then, I've worked on all kinds of software related products, artificial intelligence, SaaS product, robots, you name it, professional services. And I absolutely love tech. Now, granted, I cannot build a robot, but I am very good at working with the team, understanding how the technology works, and then bringing it to life. So it was once again the product team who helped me learn and show me and teach how everything works. And but again, I think for me, going back to your original question, that learning, you have to be open to learning no matter what. And I spend every day, I would say, at least half an hour, if not more, every morning, just looking at what's new technology out there, what's new, what's emerging, where are the challenges, whether it's generative AI and chat GPT or, metaverse. And so, so it's just, you have to have that trust that you have to push yourself and have that appetite to learn. That's probably what was my guiding principle, and it still is.
Yeah, that's wonderful to know. I mean, but I think at that point of time, what decision you took, where you landed from, and then how you ramp up was a very different part. And that's the journey that we are looking forward to unfold in this show today. So, going back, like, you did the corporate jobs, you were there. Probably one of the women who got to sit at the table, work with a very different type of people, different fields altogether. And how you decided to advocate to women, start some programs for them. I mean, right now you are working on many platforms. You are explicitly working for women in tech. You are explicitly, or I wouldn't say explicitly, but it's one of your specialty where you are enforcing that. You're doing many programs. You are, on many boards where there are women entrepreneurs coming together. There are many communities where you're guiding as a board member, or and I think we met at VT Summit or one of the event, right, which was again for the women's. So how did that happen then? I mean, what was the trigger that you realized that, what, I really have to stand tall. I really have to be backbone of my own community and, come and add some colors.
That's a really great question. So when I had a seat at the table, needless to say, I was super proud because, you come from a different country, nobody knows you, nobody wanted to hire you. And here you are sitting around the table, not even across, around the table of brilliant, smart men. And oftentimes I would just like listen to everybody and say, I'm the only woman here. Awesome. And then I realized very quickly that though it was a proud moment for me, it's not a proud moment for the other women who are in the company or in the industry. And I also have a son and a daughter. So I wanted to make sure that they too, each one of them had a seat at the table, right? Whether it's my son or my daughter. And that's kind of when I started coming up with programs, talking to the CEO or the leadership team to start programs to support both the women who are in the organization as well as the community. So at iRobot, that was my first corporate job. And there I worked with the co-founders, Helen Grainer, who is a phenomenal woman roboticist, and Colin Engel, who is the CEO. And working with her, Helen and Colin, we essentially created a STEM program for high school students, for elementary to high school students. This program, we would bring students from different schools to come and meet the engineers, see the robots in action, get to know how the robotics industry works. And on the outside, I would work with organizations like WITI, Women in Tech International, here in Boston, to do events, to spotlight women, to have mentoring sessions, and so on. That's essentially how we got started, and no going back. And now that I have my company, it allows me the opportunity to work with more women entrepreneurs, especially women in tech, and help them not just with their business, but have conversations with them as they are looking for their career moves or their next their journey in the tech industry or in any industry, depending on who I'm talking to. So yeah, I'm super privileged to be working with amazing women and like yourself and so many others.
Wonderful. So when you're working with a lot of women, also I think the high school student girls out there who are entering into robotics and the other fields which were like prevalent with the men before. So what are some of the common issues that you observe between, two different genders?
I think that's a really good question. I would say it varies. I don't think there is one challenge that I'll say is prevalent or core, but I think it depends on the position the person is on. So if the person is a VP and above or a CEO or above, it's a very different challenge for them. So for example, some of the women entrepreneurs that I have worked with, or I think their big challenge is not having the credibility they need to interact with their male counterparts. I think it's also the culture. And then the third category I put it as, so I am on the board of, I'm a career advisor for All Race Scholars. So they have programs that help Boston students return to college and graduate. I was talking to a couple of them the other day, and one of them has imposter syndrome. She's going to college. Now, I hope she doesn't mind my sharing her story, but she has 6 kids that she's raising. She started her own program during COVID. She's gone back to college to get a degree. I'm like, what are you talking about? What imposter syndrome?
Exactly. I mean, she's doing more than what she could actually handle. Raising 6 kids is a big full-time job.
It is. And I was trying to tell her, I said, you're doing way more than what maybe another person would be doing, like, let alone, I mean, you got so many kids that you're raising and taking them to school and dealing with them in COVID. You're an entrepreneur and you're going back to college. Like, how can you have imposter syndrome? So I think again, the challenges can be very different. But I feel that what is common is they just need to be able to talk about it, give them a platform or a community where they feel safe to come and have a conversation and just let it all out. And then you need the support system of that community to say, what do you mean imposter syndrome? What do you mean they're telling you you cannot be a CEO? Like, of course you can. Like, and then it's like, what do we do to help you out? And that's the piece where I love what we do, because that's where we come in to say, okay, what can we do to help you? Let's get you there. That's it. It's just a very fulfilling and a privilege to be able to do that for people.
Wonderful. So having thought about like you are actually going and asking people like, okay, so if you want to be from, X to Y position, what is that you really need to be there? And of course, with your expertise, you also guide people like this could be your path and you need to be seen this way. You need to be perceived this way. Like one of the story that you mentioned that people are not perceiving some talent that they can really do certain type of jobs or they can be leaders or they can be, handling more than what is being given, or probably they're already doing it but the titles are not coming through. And I'm very interested in understanding that what type of programs that you have crafted along, and is there any specific program that you have for just for the women entrepreneurs, women career oriented women who are looking forward to pivot their career in different fields, or raising their personal brand for any of the dreams that they're looking for?
So I don't know if you read a book by Harvey Coleman, but he has this formula, which I love. He calls it success equals PIE, P-I-E. P is performance, I is image, and E is exposure. So according to his model, Performance is great. That's 10% of what you do. Like, people know that's your day-to-day job. You are doing amazing job. You're getting good results in your company, and maybe your boss knows it, right? But performance based is 10, and the image is 30%. So, which means that how many people, like, what are other people thinking of you? What's the perception? What's the perception of you by your peers, your boss, what have you? So that's 30%. And then 60% is exposure, which is who knows about you and what do you do? And that's the critical piece that we focus on. You're very good at your job. Of course you are. I mean, otherwise you wouldn't be moving up the ladder or you wouldn't be running a company, right? But it is that 60% of who knows about you is extremely critical. And that's where we recommend, and also now I think that when I look at that 60%, I look at it more like a digital footprint. When people come to LinkedIn, what are they seeing? When they are Googling you, what's popping up? And I think that's really important. So the programs, so we have multiple programs, and most of our programs are very customized to an individual. We don't have like a blanket thing that we just push people into. But once we know what their goals are, and every individual has different goals. So we will craft a program with them, which includes how do we position them? What is their expertise? What should they be known for? And then supporting it with different kinds of programs to amplify their expertise. I think for us, we start out the positioning it's just like a company. Like you always start by positioning the company in like 2 words, 3 words. You can describe the company. That's exactly where we start with individuals, and then the rest just follows. So building their digital footprint and market credibility is essentially where we start.
When you do that, one has to be very sure where they want to head up. And that is another process in itself. Like sometimes people just don't know where they want to head out, and that becomes the most hurdle when you're creating the personal brands. So what are some of the expertise that you really offer, click that right thing and move ahead?
I think almost everybody has that problem. And it's okay. And people want to know where they want to go, but the paths are not that hard to figure out. So if you're in the corporate world, for example, you want to move up the ladder. Like you want to get promoted, and you want people to notice you. You want people to know how awesome you are. So it's more like a career trajectory. So that's where they want to go. If you're an entrepreneur, you might want to be, either you're pivoting the brand, or you need to fundraise, or you need to get acquired, or you need to go for an IPO, whatever that is. So that's another path. I think those are probably, I would say, 2. Let's not go too different, but I would say those are the 2 paths. But when I talk about we need to position you for where you need to go, that is actually the absolute hardest part, because it'll be like, okay, so what are your expertise? Oh, I can cook, I can clean, I can write code, I'm a great engineer, I can grow the company. Like it's amazing. So whenever I start with an individual, I kid you not, I have information from their high school days often through their career, boil it all down, and then say, okay, so where do you want to go now? You want to be a CEO, or you want to be known as a founder of an AI company, right? So we kind of take all of that information and process it and come and position them into words. So that's kind of the biggest challenge that every individual has when we start the whole positioning process. But we get there pretty quickly.
So these are like some of the programs that you mentioned that you're doing it for the career, who have already started career and onto it and want to, grow from there. What happens for the younger generation? You also have certain programs that you're doing it for a younger generation so that they will be, known for their own innovations. They would really take their strengths forward and do something very awesome in the field. So what kind of programs you have for those younger generations?
I think that we often would start with their with LinkedIn for them. because they're either in college or looking for, they will be looking for a job, or they're mid-level and they want to, or they're entry level and moving into the mid-level, right? So their persona has to come through very clearly when they are, especially on LinkedIn, because that's where the recruiters are. That's where your future bosses might be, and your company watches you there too. So our biggest program for that category would be, how do you build your personal profile on LinkedIn? And in this case, we don't do the positioning because they are literally school kids or they are college kids and moving up. But for them, it's really important to, once they know which area they need to go, for example, if it's an AI, or they want to be in finance, or they want to be in creative, for example, you give them, once you learn that, you kind of say, okay, which company do you want to work at, right? So then you kind of go at, okay, who will hire you? Which, will it be a recruiter or will it be the VP of engineering? So we kind of identify the company and the possible hiring managers, and kind of have them observe, like, what are those people talking about? Are they engaging? What are their company doing? And then once they're comfortable, then they start engaging with the hiring managers, or, and again, not bragging, not selling, but commenting on, on the industry or an article that they wrote, or maybe they met at a networking event. So kind of a very casual relationship building way of engaging with where you want to work next. And I think that's kind of one of the tips that we give them, and oftentimes help them out in, how do you craft it? How do you engage? We actually land up doing a do-it-yourself editorial strategy for them for LinkedIn. So that, and then we'll work with them for a few weeks to say, okay, this is how you're going to do it. And then we'll teach them how to do it. And then they'll go on and manage it on their own. And we'll keep an eye out and say, okay, this is going great. Or, maybe you want to tweak this a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like a no-brainer, but it is a pretty difficult thing to do. There is some kind of a conversation that goes on in different communities where they say, oh, you have to, do 30 posts a week, or every day you got to do 20 posts. Doesn't work that way, because then it becomes just noise, and you're not focused on,
Right.
what your expertise is, or which career you want to have. So I think this one is very targeted. You don't have to spend hours and hours. You spend, even if it's like 15 minutes a day, it's still doable. So it's a very targeted program for them.
So yeah, that's where actually I was coming. Handling the social media, teaching it is all great, but then we don't want to get lost and seen as a noise, and that's one of the very key factor and a very diligent way to handle that part. So other than that, I also want to ask you, like, people who know that they are embarking their marks, but there are also people, or they are doing reinforcement, or coming back to the workforce. So those are like very, that segment of audience, or that segment of viewers. What type of advice you have for them? They have a career gap for whatever family reasons, they had to take or support something else at the particular time, and they were just off scene, oft on LinkedIn, oft on many things, and now they are, gathering their energy back. They're like looking forward, taking some courses. How do they start building their brand? Because then it becomes even more crucial, right, to come back with that energy, come back with the strength, and shred off your lot of things that you were with, and going forward.
Yes, that's definitely a whole group of people that falls in that category. So I think the first thing that I do with that group of people is to find out, what did you do when you took the time off raising kids? Were you taking care of elderly parents? Did you write for, like, were you writing blogs? And you'll be amazed to find that most of, at least the ones that I had the pleasure of working or knowing, they did something during the time when they were not in the corporate world. And I often look at that as, that is an amazing thing that you've done. So don't just say, hey, I took time off and I did nothing. I think it's for me, it's finding out, what did you do during that time off? And even whether you're raising a kids, it's a lot of work to raise children.
Yeah.
Like people can say, oh yeah, so you're a stay-at-home mom. Like, what do you do? Come on, that's a lot that you do. So I think for me, it's finding out what did you do when you took the time off, and then turn that into a positive. It's usually a positive, but they might not see it as a positive. Whether you're taking care of the elderly parents, that is a huge responsibility, right? So it's kind of looking at that, turning it into a positive, and then looking at, so where do you want to go now? And oftentimes they will change the industry. They might have been in like tech, but now they want to go into finance because they realize that that's something they're very good at. You know where you want to go. I think, again, networking is key. Read, listen to podcasts, do ebooks, but you got to bring yourself up to date. That's very, very important. You have to be relevant. And I think now, because it's the digital world, right? There's so many things that you can get online. You have master classes that are free. You have podcasts that you can listen to. You have virtual events and panels. Many of them are free. It's kind of look at where can you learn, and participate also and engage. And then the last thing, like I tell the students, you figure out where do you want to work. And then you start engaging on, again, start with LinkedIn. Let's not try and boil the ocean. Just go with one, start on LinkedIn and see where it goes. And the other thing I might say, because this happened to several of the people that I know, there are companies, big companies, who actually have programs where they like different education programs to get the people who've been out of the corporate world or out of the workforce, to get them, to help prepare them to get back into the workforce. So look around and see which companies are doing it and apply and be part of that group.
Yeah, there are actually many big companies who have actually started those programs, and they generally launch around New Year or midterms, and these programs like help them acquire the skills. At the same time, they guaranteed to have, 6 months of contract or something from them, and once it clicks, they will be going for a full time. So those are like some of the awesome tips that you really shared, for people who are looking forward to get back to the workforce or also start a new career or pivot their fields and whatnot. So my main question, how did you get this drive that you want to work for people, you want to make them seen? What was that fuel that you had it within you, or what was that hunger that made you to take this journey and, said like, I would like to advocate my people, I will advocate the way I have advocated corporates, and now I want to get into the personal branding for the people. So what was that like?
I would say it's the gap that I found as I was going through my career journey and starting these different programs, whether it's in the school system or working with local organizations or the organizations that I serve on their boards. It was, oh, of course, I know I need to do this, but I don't know how. And I think that's one of the reasons why I launched my consulting firm, is to say, if I can help more people build their market credibility, build their visibility so that they are successful in whatever their goals are, whether it's a promotion or get funding or pivot the company, why not? And it's just a passion of mine somehow. I don't know how, but it's something I'm good at, which is also something I'm very passionate about. And I'm extremely grateful that people trust me with their individual brands and help them get to where they want to go. Now, if I were to kind of, when I say trust, for the executives, for example, they have to run the company, build their product, talk to customers. They don't have time to build their digital presence. We do it for them. To the world, they're doing it behind the scenes, it's us. So every post that goes out, every byline that we write, everything that we do that has the executive or the individual's name on it, we have to be extremely careful. Anything you say will impact their business, their brand in public. If these are public company executives, their stock's going to tank.
Right.
So it is a trust and an opportunity, and we take it very seriously.
What I find is like you really love working with people because it's a very diligent area. People like working with people. People like having friends, families around, and but not many people are really compassionate to take them, excel them. Sometimes they don't know. Sometimes they lack those magic skills that you have. But also, it's more to it is like you're looking it at as a this person has a talent, and I don't think it should be hidden. It should be coming across. It will help benefit at a larger scale, and I think it's that drive that makes you going. I mean, it comes very organic to you, so you probably are not putting out in the words, but this is what I view you when I look at Parna, and looking forward, why she's behind people to make them excel, why she's hosting so many webinars, and especially the women's, she's pushing forward, like they have some good things and just take them across. It's some of the experiences that you must have gone through past, and you realize, oh my god, I wish I had that push, and that's where the more contribution is coming.
I think that's a really good point. So if I look back at my life, like where I began many years ago, so I wanted to be a doctor, and I was told, well, you've got to be in school for so long, and who's going to marry you after that? Like, you'll be old. And I was like, really? But but that's kind of the culture that we grew up in. But also, I think the school systems that we went to, right? I mean, we all were privileged to have gone to really good schools, but I was like petrified of math and science, and I wasn't any good at it. And maybe it was just the way I was taught, or maybe I didn't think I was smart enough to be an engineer, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then when I come to this country and I see how they are teaching math and science, like it's all about application in the real world. They'll use cooking to teach them math, or of working with like my local school system over here to build what we call the Math Wizards Club. So it was like with games that we would teach the kids, and they're like, oh, I didn't realize that was math. But the teacher would say, oh yeah, we just learned XYZ with math, and that was really great. And my whole point was, I have a daughter and a son. I don't want them to worry about like how I grew up, like I being scared of math and science. When I landed up in the tech world, I can tell myself I am smart enough. I cannot build, I cannot code, but I understand technology. And it is that passion for technology. That's where I'll be, asking my questions, learning about tech, and saying, okay, so how is your technology helping? Like, what's the application? What's the impact to humans, to society, to the planet, right? So I feel like that was my past of being afraid of math and science. And now I am working, and I work with like brilliant engineers and innovators, and I can talk tech with the very best of them, right? What I also realize is that we have these brilliant women entrepreneurs and brilliant scientists and engineers. Why wouldn't they want to go out and share their expertise with the world, right? When I, for example, get invited to, do a keynote or be on a panel, or go speak, I would actually invite women on my panel. Instead of me talking or doing a keynote, I will spotlight them, use my platform to help spotlight them, because they're doing amazing work. And we need the world to know that here are these women engineers, women entrepreneurs doing phenomenal things. So I look at it as, if I can help spotlight more women in tech, more entrepreneurs, why not?
Yeah, that's so true. When we go forward with, your programs, your consulting firm, and what you do now, I also see that there are certain people that you must be working, which comes with the different cultures. Like, as you mentioned, when you were growing up, there were so many myths around that gender to be, brought it up or grown up. And so now and then you're going around with such kind of people, and you really have to, make sure that they come out of that and still their brand come across. So there is also social shyness that many cultures inherently have it, right? There are a lot of myths around your digital brands. So what are the common myths that you say, or the don'ts that you see, and what are the most important factor, like what are the do's that you see that has to be going on? And
let me put that in gender context.
Mhm.
So when I am working with a male executive or a male founder, and I say, okay, if this is your goal, we have to build your market credibility. We need to drive your visibility. The response is, great, Parna. When do we start? When I'm talking to a woman executive, a woman engineer, I'll say, okay, you want to get promoted, but nobody knows what you do. So we need to build your digital brand. We need to build your market credibility. Oh my God, Parna, I can do that. Mm-hmm. Why not? Well, I don't like self-promotion. So that's like an example of how both the genders react to the same recommendation. But I think the biggest myth that I find when people talk about personal brand or building visibility, they think that it's about bragging. It's about self-promotion. It's about talking about themselves. It's not. It's not about you. It's not about how great you are. That's not what we're going to be talking about. What we will do is, if you are an AI expert, for example, we want to showcase your expertise around artificial intelligence to the world, to your boss, to your future boss, or to the investors. So how do we do that? So it's an educational process first, is to say, this is how we're going to do it. We will not be talking about, hey, look how great I am. We're talking about what areas of AI do you want to talk about? Who do you want to interact with? How much time do you want to give to that, for example? Because we're not asking you to sit and do podcasts all day. We're not asking you to write articles all day. But once we know how much time you're willing to commit, even if we write it for you, we still need time to pick your brain, right? So I think it's that educational piece of, it's not self-promotion, it's not bragging, but it's really showcasing your expertise. And again, if I go back to the whole LinkedIn, using that as a platform, it's again, commenting on relevant articles, relevant news, sharing curated content around artificial intelligence, if that's the expertise that you want to show. So I think that is how I would suggest building a digital presence, not as a bragging, but how can you help other people by sharing your knowledge?
That's wonderful. That's, that look at it as, what you're really good at, and just focus on that. And, whatever that you have, the strings attached, just remove them, because they really don't hold value there. But what holds value is your focus, and, where you want to go next, and, going ahead with that. So I know a lot of stigmas. I mean, every individual would have some or the other stigma, but then whether that stigma is relevant to keep it, or it is good to drop. So Parna, as we come and round up the show, I would like to ask you the advice question. And since you are one of the brand marketing, buzz marketing, and everybody is looking forward to have their own buzz in the world, what are some of the important tips you like to share for an individuals? I mean, the corporates are a very different segment, but we are looking forward to the individuals who are, tuning into our show just to get these tips out. What are some of the important tips you like to share with them?
Sure. So I think the first question you should ask yourself is why? Why do you want to build your brand? Is it because you're looking for a promotion, a career change? You are launching a company. So I think you need to find out why you want to build your brand. Secondly, you need to figure out what's your expertise. I think that is the most critical. And that's where you need to spend a lot of time identifying what your expertise is and why should people come to you for that particular expertise. And then the third, I would say, is identify who you want to reach, because you cannot reach anybody and everybody, because then it gets to be too much. So once you know who your target audience is, it's going to be much easier. And the next thing to find out is where can you engage with your target audience? It could be LinkedIn, it could be Instagram, it could be, different platforms, depending on who you're trying to reach. And then the last thing that I would add is you have to figure out how much time you have to devote to building your personal brand. So if I can put that in context, so when I started my company 5 years ago, the company that I was working for, when I told my boss that I'm going to start my company, he said, okay, I'll become your first client. So that's how my company started. And I quickly realized that I didn't have time to build my brand, which meant that I'll have to do my website, drive traffic. I didn't have time for all of that. So I decided that I'm going to write for Forbes. And I got invited to the Forbes community. I joined, and I literally devoted like 2 hours a month to write like one article a month. That's how I kind of used my time to promote my brand, in the sense, so if people are looking for Parna, at least Parna will come up. It's really important that you are, you know what your expertise is, you know who you want to work with. And of course, you have to be discoverable. People have to find you.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So there is a lot of disciplinary work that goes behind. It cannot be just started. There has to have a good time commitment to it. Waking up every day, spending that 15 minutes of ritual and doing that. So I see a huge, I mean, what you mentioned, like those tips, they themselves are, kind of a big homework for someone to unfold, and then, staying relevant and moving ahead with that. I would like to ask you, what are some of the important disciplines that you have it yourself going, just to make your brand seen, and how do you really stay at it? Like maybe it's a time crafting, how you do and give importance, or anything. What type of those disciplinary tips that you have for us?
So I do two things for myself. One is I spend a lot of time reading in the morning. Like I'll wake up, I'll have my 2 cups of coffee, and I'm literally like going through. I have a dashboard where all the different topics, depending on, based on my clients. So it'll be manufacturing, innovation, product design, you name it. So that's how. So I need to know like what's happening, what's relevant. And then the second thing that I do for myself is every Friday, I allocate 2 hours to just talk to people. Even during COVID, I did that. It's just getting to know how everybody is. And so, yes, I do that every week. I've done it since I started my company, and all through COVID, it was digital, and I still do it.
Wow. Wow, that's a wonderful commitment that you have. Thank you, Parna, for joining us on this podcast and sharing your wonderful tips, and also unfolding a lot of things for people, why it is. I mean, everybody understands that the personal brand, their digital footprints are way more important nowadays to grow in the career and move forward. But beneath that, what it goes, what it takes, those are like the important segments that we wanted to unfold with you. And you, I think, did really wonderful job and gave us a good homework to work on. Thank you for doing that. And it was very pleasure for Women Special Express to host you on the podcast and share the relevant topics. And I think the best takeaway for me from this show was, for the people who are looking forward to join the workforce, who are just winding up something that was important in their life, but now focusing on their career. For them, I think it would be a very great takeaway and a must listen show. So
well, thank you for saying that. I hope that some of the tips that I gave them, they'll find helpful. And again, I will offer my service if anybody wants to talk to me, understand, what they could be doing if they would, and if they just want to talk, that's okay too. I'm here for them.
And what are your some of the handles that you like to brief us? Definitely we'll add them in the comment, but just to hear out, what are your some of the handles where they can reach you?
So I would say the best place to reach me is LinkedIn. So just look for Parna Sarkar-Basu. And I don't know if there's any other person with that long name, but you'll see my branded image there, my purple picture. So that is me, and that I would say is the best place to reach me.
Wonderful. And which is the right website for people to see what type of services you offer for individuals as well as corporate?
Sure. So you go to www.brandandbuzzmarketing.com.
Wonderful. Thank you. So, listeners, if you like this show, let us know in the comments. What was the most important takeaway for you to get from this. It could be even for the high school student as well as for any mid ladder career oriented person who is looking forward to create their own buzz. Let us know in the comments what you really like the most out of this show and what type of guests you like to be invited on our podcast and you would like to tune in. We'll be definitely taking your inputs into the considerations and looking forward to hear back and cater this podcast for as a platform for all of you where what you're looking forward will be heard, and we'll make sure that we bring expert people to guide us on those topics. So wonderful to have you, Parna. Thank you for your time once again, and namaskar.
Namaskar. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.